What is going on, Failroaders? I'm Joshua Thomas, and I'm finally here to bring you guys my thoughts on the 25th anniversary reveal of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and give my predictions on some things that I think are going to happen. I'm going to keep this one a little bit shorter. If you guys are wondering why it took me so long to come out with this video, well, the big answer is, yeah, for those of you who don't know, I'm in the National Guard, so I was actually gone for my annual training on June 16th when the anniversary video was announced. So I was watching it on my little phone, but I really didn't have a chance to post any videos reacting to it. So I hate that I didn't get to do that. And then I got home and I got COVID, and tonight is honestly the first night where I'm actually feeling really good again. My voice is still a little hoarse. You might hear that difference in me. Might cough a few times, which is why I'm not live streaming this, because I don't want it to be filled with coughs. So let's get started on this, though. So the 25th anniversary had a ton of awesome stuff in it, and I'm actually going to come up with a video later on trying to help people who are new to the 7 franchise figure out what they need to play first and how all this stuff is interconnected. But let's just get straight to what we really want to see here, and that is the trailer to Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. So it starts off here. We've got a feather coming down. Actually, you know what? Let's get the...
He wants to reclaim his birthright
Here it is. That might be too loud.
and rule over the planet with Genova
There
at
we
his
go.
side. I saw you lying there. I figured it was too late.
Wait, what are you implying? That I died? That I'm some kind of imposter?
What is fact and what is fiction?
You were here with me 5 years ago.
This is so great.
Where are you? What happened to you?
I'm trying so hard to
So
find you.
I'm going to go back through this
Sorry.
with the sound off.
Feel like I failed you.
Fantasy VII Rebirth. Alright, and then it says available next winter. So I'm going to turn the sound off on that. And let's go through this like just frame by frame. We've got the feather falling here, and then we've got Zack and Cloud walking towards Midgar. So what I'm thinking here, let's go back to the feather. This is most likely Angeal's feather. And I think what this might be in reference to is at the end of Crisis Core, we see similar feathers falling like this. And here we have the same kind of feather falling, and I think that is sort of referencing like, hey, look, here's a connection between the ending of Crisis Core and what we're seeing here. Things have changed. We've got the feather falling here, but Zack is alive, whereas in Crisis Core, huge spoilers alert, by the way, we're going to be talking about a lot of Final Fantasy VII stuff here. Zack is dead. So at the end of Crisis Core, Zack is dead, and Angeal is coming down as sort of an angel, lifting him up to heaven, or, the Promised Land, or the live stream, whatever you want to call it. So we continue on here. And this, a lot of people were theorizing that Zack was dead. We'll get back into that later here. Here we've got Cloud and Sephiroth walking in the Nibel Mountains. You can see in the background the mountains themselves. It looks like they're kind of maybe at the beginning here. So this might be them walking from Nibel, like maybe the mansion is just behind them, and they're walking towards the bridge leading into the forest that leads into the mountains. So this could be somewhat edited. Like, I'm not exactly sure if this is going to be like the final look. Maybe they just wanted to show this as a teaser, and then the points at which they kind of cut these scenes. So at this point in the Nibel flashback, we should have a couple other people with us. We should have some Shinra security officers, and we should have Cowboy Tifa. So this is taking place in the flashback at Calm, and here's something extremely important. A lot of people, after playing Remake, were theorizing that, well, there's no reason to have the flashback now. But that's not true, and I think that's something I mentioned in a few videos in the past. It's still important that we get this flashback at Calm. A lot of people were theorizing that this is how the game was going to open up for Remake Part 2, or in this case, now we know, Rebirth. So this is proof of actually several things. Number one is that, yes, we are getting the flashback to Nibelheim at Calm. Calm being the town that the party was walking to at the end of Final Fantasy VII Intermission, so at the end of Yuffie's DLC. So maybe where it cuts here, I'll play it again. You see it's going onto this bridge and then it cuts. I'm wondering if the security officers and Tifa maybe walk into frame a little bit after this, and maybe that's why they're cutting here. What is Sephiroth's endgame? So it not only proves that the flashback is happening, which is an extremely important part of the original Final Fantasy game, it also proves that more things that people were theorizing, especially who were worried about the next game, were saying, oh man, they're going to cut all this stuff out of the game and it's not going to be anything like the original Final Fantasy. This isn't what I asked for. The directors have said that, in the past that, yeah, they are going to follow the same path in this new game, and this is also further proof of that just because the story has changed a little bit doesn't mean that we're not going to get to see our favorite parts from the original game in amazing high definition. So, and here we have them, just Cloud and Sephiroth walking again, so I'm wondering if it, maybe this is a part where Tifa has fallen down the cliff. Let's just back up to this too, right to here. And we can see some awesome stuff going on here. We can see, number one, it looks beautiful, but we've got much more evidence of civilization in this game. And this is something that I'm hoping for, not just in this area, but in the entire world of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. So what we see here are some pipelines, we see some buildings in the distance. This kind of gives us a reminiscence of Crisis Core, where they added extra parts of civilization. I mean, if you ever played Crisis Core and remember the war with Wutai, man, Wutai was a small village in Final Fantasy VII, the original game. And then in Crisis Core, it's like Wutai was this force that could combat Shinra and had tons of soldiers and bases everywhere. I'm thinking that the world of FF7 Rebirth is going to be littered with small outposts, if you will, reminiscent of Final Fantasy 15. You didn't necessarily, you had towns and cities, but then there were small outposts dotted in between them all. And so I'm thinking we're going to get something similar in 7 Remake. But you see, there's lots of extra buildings. None of these are the Mount Nibel reactor. I want to make that clear. If anything, oh gosh, I don't even know if I can see it on this screen right now. Let me play a little bit more. Nah, I could have sworn that I saw the Mount Nibel reactor. If anything, it's right where the flock of birds just went. I wish you could see my mouse, but there's a flock of birds, and to the left of that, in the fog, I think is where I could see a little something, but I think the reactor is much further past these mountains. It appears that there's like a sort of a trail or something in the very distance leading into the fog beyond the mountains where we can't see. So I'm thinking that we're going to be going through this area big time. So this is once again proof that we're going to get to go to the Mithril Mines and to Junon, possibly Fort Condor. We're going to hit all these important locations. And while new and exciting things may happen at these locations, we're still going to get to experience our favorite moments from the OG game in Rebirth. So we're going to get to meet Zack's parents at Gongaga. We're going to get to meet Bugenhagen at the Cosmo Canyon. We're going to Nibelheim, where we're going to have a confrontation with Sephiroth in the Shinra Manor. All these things are still going to happen, but new things are going to be added to it as well. Let's keep watching. Actually, let's keep watching one more time. So we get a flashback like what we saw in Remake. What is fact and what is fiction? This also pertains to Remake as well. And here we have, once again, Angeal's Feather. They're walking towards Midgar. I'll get into the dialogue as well, too. Here, we'll do a dialogue pass. And then we have here Zack and Cloud walking towards Midgar. Obviously, Sector 6, because it's under construction. Just like in Remake, when Sector 6 was still being rebuilt from when it collapsed several years ago. A lot of people were theorizing that even the stuff that we had seen in Remake, the flashbacks and whatnot, that Zack was still dead. I don't know. Zack is alive. I'm saying it right here. I know other content creators have said it too, but I'm definitely believing Zack is alive, and I think he's going to play a very long and extensive part in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and possibly even the third part of this, what we know now to be a trilogy. So there's the people who theorized that he was going to be dead, or that he would die, or this was going to be in the live stream. I don't think they're going to pull that rug out from under us. I don't think Square Enix would do something like that in this way to, just kill him off at the very beginning of Rebirth and say, ha, fooled you, okay, now things are going back the way they were. That would be subverting the audience, not subverting the audience's expectations. That would be sort of undermining the audience. So I don't think that's something that they would want to do there. So let's continue on. And then we get the title screen, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, with the slightly reddish hue at the very bottom of the meteor. Some people are theorizing that this has to do with Genesis, and it very well could, which is possibly why they are re-releasing Crisis Core on several platforms, so that they can sort of reintroduce Genesis, because, if you're like me, you had the PSP, and that's the only place where Crisis Core is playable right now. I don't know about you guys, but my PSP is on its last leg. Like, its original battery swelled up, so I had to get a replacement battery, and ever since I got that replacement battery from, an off-brand, the screen has slowly been going bad on my PSP, and I don't know if that's just age or if that's partially due to the new battery that I installed in it. But either way, lots of people can't play Crisis Core, so that's going to be interesting right there. My theory about this slightly red logo is that it represents that Meteor is coming, that maybe we're going to get to the part where Sephiroth summons Meteor, and we're going to see it off in the distance, just a faint red glow, and then in part 3, we'll call it Retribution or something like that. Final Fantasy VII Retribution. it's going to be completely red or maybe half red to show that, hey, look, it's like in the planet's atmosphere now. So um, let's go back to the dialogue. What we've done, that's set in stone. The past is forever. The future, even if it's so focus on the future, not the past. So that's Aerith talking about, hey, we guys need to move on, and no matter whether we think that the past is set in stone or the future set in stone, we can change it. He wants to reclaim his birthright, rule over the planet with Genova at his side. He wants to do more than just that. He wants to, but that's something that he reveals later. I saw you lying there. I figured it was too late. This is Cloud. What are you implying? Tifa says that I died, that I'm some kind of imposter. I can't remember at what point in the original game a dialogue like this happened, but this could be in the live stream in the OG game, but I cannot confirm it as I didn't look up the footage. But basically this is, Tifa and Cloud having a conversation possibly at two different points in the game. Cloud mentioning how he saw her lying there after Sephiroth cuts her deeply, and then Tifa saying, was I dead? Did I die? And was I brought back to life, after that? Somehow like that. What is fact? What is fiction? Now here's the interesting stuff. You were here with me 5 years ago. Where are you? What happened to you? This is Cloud referring to Zack. And so, in order for Cloud to be doing this, Cloud has to remember, number one, Zack. Remember that Zack and he are, two separate people, whereas in Remake he doesn't. So, are we witnessing a dream, some kind of unconsciousness, or at some point in Rebirth is Cloud going to have these moments of clarity where he's seeing or remembering, without the influence of Tifa or the live stream, bits of his past? What's going on here? This is some really interesting stuff. And then I'm trying so hard to find you. I know exactly what point in the game this is. This is actually extremely similar to a line that Aerith says directly to Cloud in the Gold Saucer date scene. So in the Gold Saucer date scene, you can get, similar to the end of Chapter 14, multiple different versions of the date depending on your choices that you make throughout the OG game. You can go on a date with Tifa, Aerith, Barrett, Yuffie, and I think Sid too. I don't know if it's possible to go on a date with just any of the characters, but I have seen dates with those characters. So it is going to be interesting. I'm wondering, based on our decisions now, that there are going to be more characters in the party, what's the possibilities? Chances are we're going to get as far as the flying saucer. So are we going to get date scenes possibilities with, we know there's going to be Aerith and Tifa, but what about Yuffie? Are we going to get a scene with Barrett again if we're just horrible to all the women? Could we get one with Red 13? And then Sid, if we're just like if we're the worst person possible? Yeah, I could see us getting a date with Sid. So that's going to be some interesting stuff. But yeah, this line comes from the date scene with Aerith and Cloud at the Gold Saucer. Sorry, feel like I failed you, is Zack talking to probably Aerith. So we saw at the end of Yuffie's DLC that Zack opens the door to the church and she's not there. He's looking for Aerith actively. So, and that's another interesting thing too. That's one of those things I'm going to have to make another video on, is what's going to happen with Zack in this game. So now let's move over to something else. The messages that we got from the different creators of Final Fantasy VII Remake. Let's look at Nomura's response here is revealed on the broadcast. There are currently 4 Final Fantasy VII projects being developed in parallel. Although each of the 4 titles plays a different role, they are all connected through the high-quality depiction of Final Fantasy VII's world and characters. As someone who was involved in the development of each and every one of the original titles, I deeply understand the vision and thoughts behind each project, and I am actively involved in the development process for all 4 titles. So that makes me think that this new Crisis Core we're getting may have some modifications done to it. But also, this is also one of those reasons why I'm going to come up with, hey, what order should you play all these Final Fantasy VII games in? Because, yeah, to new players, it could definitely be confusing. So, let's continue on. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is being designed so that people can enjoy this game, whether they know the original game or not. In fact, new players might even enjoy starting the Final Fantasy VII journey with Rebirth. Cloud and his friends embark on a new journey in this game, and I believe that the scenes that they witness after leaving Midgar will give players a fresh new experience. Alright, let me switch back here. Yeah. Alright. So, what I think this means is that, yes, we are essentially starting over. We are, maybe we're going to start at level 7 or something, or maybe level 1 in the flashback. But there's a lot to unpack there. We're going to start off with very little materia, maybe 1 weapon apiece, maybe like our starter weapons. And there's not going to be much else. Because remember, at the end of Final Fantasy VII, when they're on the bridge, before they enter the Singularity to fight Sephiroth and the Harbinger, Aerith says, hey, look, if we go through this portal, we're changing ourselves forever. So they've kind of hit the reset button, I guess, on their abilities, and maybe they're going to use that as an excuse. Materia is going to be level 1. We're not going to get like high-level materia at the beginning of this game, because this game is going to be set up for new players as well. So let's continue reading. Let's switch back. His second part of his post. I can't wait to share the intention behind the naming of the first title, Remake, and the second, Rebirth. In time, I hope to reveal what the third title will be called and where this journey will ultimately lead. That's pretty exciting. The development of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth has been progressing rapidly since we adopted a new development structure, which is pretty cool. A title of this scale in which everything is interconnected even before production began is truly rare. In fact, some development has already begun on the third title. I myself have started on the development and am working toward the completion of the series. We will work to develop this title to deliver this title to fans the same amount of enthusiasm from now until we reach the finish line. In the meantime, please enjoy the 25th anniversary projects that further expand the world of Final Fantasy VII. So, they've already started working on the final title, and that does make sense because once we get to the end of Rebirth, the journey that Final Fantasy VII takes is most likely going to go back to many of the places that we will have already been to before. So it makes sense to sort of pull like a Lord of the Rings on this, where they filmed everything at the same time, because it's cheaper that way. Alright. Now from Hamaguchi, the director. I am overjoyed that we are able to announce Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and I feel a strong sense of duty to deliver the ultimate Final Fantasy VII experience to all the fans eagerly awaiting this game. The development has already entered full production, and the team is highly motivated in putting everything together on the project and working to create a finished game. The Final Fantasy VII Remake project will be a 3-part trilogy, and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is much more than just one installment in the series. We are developing it with all the passion and dedication needed to create an original game and plan to deliver the ultimate gameplay and world-building experience. Trust me, it will be worth it. Trust me, it'll be worth it. Alright. So that's pretty exciting. They're making this sound like it's going to be a much larger game than the remake was. So, and in order for them to get far enough into it, I think, like, people are theorizing now that they're going to get to the Northern Crater, which is a long ways into the game, which would encompass having a lot more locations in Rebirth than Remake had. And not only are we talking about just the single storyline, but we're also talking about possible two storylines here with Cloud and Party and then Zack and Party. And wondering how these two storylines are going to converge with each other, and what characters are going to survive. So let's look at the last one, and this is quite possibly the weirdest and most important one, I think. Oh, where did we go? Where did we go? Here we are. Kitase. Kitase has some of the most interesting things that he says here. We have officially announced that the second title, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, will be released next winter, approximately 3 years after the original Final Fantasy VII Remake released in April 2020. Okay, so he says approximately 3 years after. That's a release date of 2023, like March to April 2023. If this isn't a typo here, if he's not just, screwing up on his math, that's next year, as opposed to when they say next winter, people are theorizing winter 23-24. In other words, it's going to be 24 by the time. But here he specifically says 3 years. I'm going to keep reading. 3 years may feel like a long time for all the fans who are eagerly awaiting the next game, but we want to offer the best experience possible and reassure everyone that development is proceeding at an astonishingly fast pace for such a large-scale HD title. Once again, still awesome to hear that how big this game is going to be. Making the middle part of the trilogy has its own challenges, but there are plenty of classic second installments in the world of film that are defined by stunning story twists and deeper explorations of their characters. Often these second installments become a favorite amongst the fans. In the same vein, we are aiming to make Rebirth an even more gripping and memorable experience than Remake, so please await a little longer while we finish up. Those are some pretty huge implications right there, and what he's saying is, in the vein of The Empire Strikes Back, and in the vein of Infinity War. These are middle points in larger productions, and the important thing we can take from here is that they are both tragedies. Empire Strikes Back and Infinity War are both tragedies. They are going to end with the heroes failing. Well, there are 3 big failure points that I can think of in the OG Final Fantasy VII. Number 1 being at the Temple of the Ancients, where Cloud just kind of hands over the black materia to Sephiroth. Number 2, and once again, huge spoiler alerts here, in the Forgotten Capital, where Sephiroth puts an end to one of our beloved characters' lives. And then finally at the Northern Crater, where they actually find Sephiroth's body, and Cloud frickin' awakens Sephiroth. That's the biggest one, the biggest shift, where they are now at an all-time low, and when Meteor is revealed to have been summoned. So that could be a hint, once again, to the logo. So those are 3 possible areas where the Rebirth could end. And once again, it is going to be something epic, something unexpected. People are going to die. Bodies are going to hit the floor this time, and they are not going to get back up. There are not going to be whispers to bring these people back to life or change things. And then the last thing, this video actually went on way longer than I thought. I'm just going to mention one more thing here, and that's in reference to what we're seeing here. And people are wondering, hey, is this going to be open world? Is this going to be linear? To me, right here, this looks linear. Now, we are in the Nibel Mountains, going from Nibelheim to the mountain area. I would expect an area like this to be closed off and pathed in because, hey, we're in the mountains. You know, if you've ever gone to the mountains, you're going through paths and trails to get to places. But we can see the high sides on each side, and yeah, as we continue on, we see that Cloud is able to climb up these rocks just kind of anywhere, or at least there's a possibility that some of the in-game graphics have been removed to keep us from getting too many details. So either the little arrow on the ground telling us where we can jump up has been removed, or Cloud can just climb up any part of those rocks. So if we look off to the right, we see a possible trail that leads up to the buildings up on the top right, or the middle right of the screen. And then it also looks like there's possibly a way to go left. Maybe that leads to the bottom areas where the buildings are over to the left of Cloud. So, nevertheless, I don't think this is going to be an open world game. The OG Final Fantasy VII really wasn't that open world. It was just wide linear. And I think that's what we're going to get here. It's extremely important to tell the story in a certain way. And so we're not just going to be able to like go to the Gold Saucer anytime we want, or go to just Junon before the story wants us to get there, or Bone Village, or Rocket Town, or any of these places. We are going to be led on a path, but this path is going to open up at points, allowing us to explore and do side quests and maybe backtrack a little bit and other things like that. But then when it comes time for important story details, it's going to close in on itself, and we're going to get stuff like what we see here, a very narrow path. And you guys might be saying, well, this is the flashback, it's going to have a narrow storytelling path. I think we're going to see a lot of that throughout the game, mixed with wide linearity areas where we can maybe roam around, do some searching and exploring like that. So, hey guys, thanks for watching. This video ended up being over 30 minutes long. I thought it was going to be like 10 minutes. If you watched this far, I appreciate it. Be sure to check out more of my Final Fantasy VII Rebirth videos that I'll have coming out in the future, and be sure to check out more board game and video game videos on the FailroadExpress. Thank you for watching. Check you next time.